Hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar on improving the commercial experience in airports. Today we're going to be looking at some of the latest trends from passenger research on the airport commercial experience and how to apply these to maximize satisfaction and spending at your airport. The least you can say when it comes to the commercial services provided by airports is that from a passenger perspective, there is room for improvement. Globally, only 40% of passengers would say they are satisfied with airport F&B. And if you look at the retail side, it's not much better. Only 49% of passengers, so less than 1 out of 2, would say they're satisfied with the duty-free experience provided by airports. That's not great. And when you take the whole airport experience and look at all the different services that make up the airport experience from a passenger perspective, you'll see that in general, the commercial services, so parking, shopping, F&B, are generally among the lowest rated by passengers. Or to put that in another perspective, passengers going through your airports would generally say that they prefer the queues at check-in, the queues at security, than they do the experience you're provided in your shops and your restaurants. Now, if as an airport your goal is to maximize non-aeronautical revenue and get your passengers to spend as much as possible at your airport, that's not great. In other words, airports need to try to improve passenger satisfaction levels with their commercial services. And what we find is that if you are able to improve passenger satisfaction levels with the commercial services, it pays off. Passengers who are most satisfied with the commercial experience provided by the airports tend to spend more time in the airport, so dwell time goes up. Passengers, when they've had a positive experience, will tend to change their travel habits and try to get to the airport as quickly or as early as possible to make sure that they have enough time to enjoy some of the commercial services the airport provides. Once they're there, they're more open to the commercial services that you're offering. They're easier to convince and to get into your shops, into your restaurants, and get them to spend. And when they do buy something from your airport, they tend to spend more on average. Globally, from all the airports we've worked with, we've seen that the most satisfied passengers tend to spend about 7% more on duty-paid retail and up to 20% more on duty-free than people who are less satisfied with the commercial experience. So focusing on improving passenger satisfaction with the commercial experience or with the airport experience makes good commercial sense. And what we found is that it doesn't take much of an improvement in the commercial experience to get a good impact on your bottom line. We've studied publicly available data from airports all over the world, and what we found is that when there's an increase in passenger satisfaction levels, there generally is an increase in non-aeronautical revenue. And you can work it down to about a rule of thumb like this, where a small increase of 0.1 in overall satisfaction with the airport experience on a 5-point scale leads to an increase in non-aeronautical revenue per in-plane passenger of roughly $0.8 US. And that's after concession agreements. That's what the airport takes at the end of the day. That's not actual spending, that's what the airports take. Spending is much more. And that gives you one of the first most important points is that this is overall satisfaction. It's not just satisfaction with the F&B or with the retail or with the parking. This is overall satisfaction with the airport. So if you want to get your passengers to spend more in your airport, you need to make sure that you're optimizing the experience you're providing to passengers. And not just with the commercial services, but with the whole airport experience. What we found is that when a passenger is unsatisfied with washrooms, check-in, security, that tends to shut them off from the commercial experience. It only takes one poor experience by passengers to completely turn them off and make them unlikely to purchase anything from your airport. So if you want to be able to optimize and maximize passenger satisfaction and spending at your airport, you need to consider commercial experience as part of the whole airport experience. And the job of everybody at the airport should be focused on trying to put the passenger in the right mood to make them want to shop from your airport. So put them in the mood to shop and make sure the whole experience works that way. And that's what we do. That's what my company focuses on. Our job, and we work with airports, concessionaires, and brands at around 300 airports around the world. And what we do is we work with them to help them find ways to improve customer satisfaction levels without spending much money. There's a lot you can do, and even with small changes, you can have a very big impact on your bottom line if you focus on your passengers and on making sure that you're providing the service they want. We do this through providing assessments and audits to help airports identify their weaknesses. We do research, such as the Airport Consumer Survey, which is the data I'll be showing you today, to help airports and brands understand what their passengers want. We do advisory services to help them understand and set a detailed strategy to maximize satisfaction levels, and customer service training to help airport teams learn best practices and how to implement these at their airport. And working with airports all over the world, we've found that there are 5 main steps that you need to go through if you want to be able to maximize passenger spending on the commercial services, or if you want to improve the commercial experience you're providing to your passengers. First one, pretty obvious, but it's knowing who your passengers are. If you want to be able to get people to buy something from your airport, you have to make sure that you're offering the type of services that passengers want. Understanding who they are and what their consumption travel habits are. Next is communicating, attracting people, informing them of what you have to offer, and making sure that they're aware of the different commercial services that you're providing. Then it's converting, making sure that you overcome the key barriers to purchase. Most people don't come to your airport with the intention of buying anything. And when they're there, there's a whole lot of different things, passenger processes and so on, that will get in their way and keep them from buying something. So if you want to be able to maximize spending at your airport and maximize your sales, you need to make sure that you get rid of all the key barriers to purchase, which could be keeping passengers from buying something at your airport. Then it's convincing, making sure that you understand what drives passenger satisfaction and spending, and make sure that you provide an experience that meets passenger needs and that meets them in a way that makes them most likely to want to purchase something from your airport. And finally, it's about measuring and tracking your performance over time, making sure that you have a system in place to capture the key data you need to take the decisions that will help you optimize your commercial experience and provide an experience that your passengers want. And we'll be looking at each of these different steps in more detail, starting with observing, understanding who your passengers are and what they want. And I'll be illustrating this with data from the 2014 Airport Consumer Survey. So the first step is understanding the travel habits and understanding what your passengers want from the airport experience and what they want from the commercial experience. Not all consumer services are consumed in the same way at airports, and not all passenger groups will want to consume them in exactly the same way. For instance, and this is data from a real airport taking part in the Airport Consumer Survey, F&B. Eating, drinking is a basic human need, and so what you see is it's generally one of the commercial services that passengers will use most. What we find is generally it's directly linked to how long a passenger is spending at the airport. The longer the dwell time at the airport, or the longer the time a passenger is spending there, the more likely they are to purchase F&B, and the more likely they are to spend more. So the longer a passenger spends at your airport, the more likely they are to purchase F&B, and the more they'll spend on it. Shopping, on the other hand, is quite different. People don't come to the airport to buy. They come to the airport to catch a plane. And so it's a much harder sell getting them to go into your shops and purchase something from those. Generally, passengers are much less likely to purchase retail or duty-free at the airport. And so the penetration rates for shopping drop really quickly. However, when people do buy, the average spend for shopping is higher than for F&B. And so that can be interesting for airports as well in terms of trying to maximize the average amount people are spending at the airport. So it's understanding that different groups have different travel habits, have different consumption habits when they're at the airport. And you need to make sure that you're planning your commercial and you're providing an experience around that meets and matches passenger needs and the needs of different types of people traveling through the airport. To illustrate this, look at the distinction between business and leisure passengers. Business passengers tend to try to minimize the amount of time they spend at the airport. Leisure passengers, on the other hand, will generally make the airport experience part of their whole trip. Like to get there early, to be able to make sure they have enough time to enjoy the different commercial services the airport has to offer. And that is reflected in their consumption patterns. Leisure passengers are more likely to purchase commercial services in airports than business passengers. And when they do buy, they tend to spend more on average, with the exception of duty-free, when they tend to spend more on average on these commercial services. So different passenger groups have different passenger needs. And what you want to be able to do, if you want to be able to sell to these different passenger groups, you have to have a detailed understanding of what they want and what they expect of your commercial services. That means you need to have a detailed understanding of the passenger profiling that goes beyond simple demographic profiling, simple statistics such as how many times per year they fly, where they're going to, and so on. The best airports tend to create very detailed demographic profiling of their passengers. They create detailed personas where they've incorporated not only the travel habits, but also the needs, the motivations, and the consumption habits of different passengers to create key segments. What this does, it helps you understand what your passengers want, how they want to consume your airport, and the type of commercial services they're interested in. And when they do purchase, what is it they want? What are the brands that interest them? Why? What are the key things or the key motivation factors that you'll be able to put forward in your communication, your marketing, to get these people to purchase from your airport? We're getting more and more requests from airports about this type of study, and if you have not implemented a detailed segmentation or detailed demographic profiling of your passengers yet, this is something I would definitely recommend doing. Where it gets really interesting is when you're able to match the demographic segments or the profiling to your actual consumer patterns at your airport. This can help you focus your commercial planning strategy, understanding which types of passengers are going through which part of the airport. So you can plan the commercial there around what those types of passengers would want. It can help you focus your communication and create the type of experience your passengers want instead of simply having a generic commercial experience that you can find in any other airport around the world, and which is a recipe for having just a bland experience and average performance. So if you don't spend time understanding who your passengers are and what they want or how they want to be able to consume your airport, you won't be getting the most out of your commercial services, and you won't be maximizing the potential of what your commercial services can offer. Second step is communicating with your passengers, informing them of what you have on offer, and creating a sense of attraction and promoting your airport as a shopping destination. Why is communication so important? Well, one of the key insights coming out of the airport consumer survey is just how important pre-planned purchases are for certain commercial services. For F&B, nearly 60% of all purchase decisions were made by passengers who came to the airport with the intention of buying. And for duty-free, this goes all the way up to 64%. So for these two, F&B and duty-free, most purchase decisions are made before the passenger has even set foot in your airport. They're thinking about this before they leave home, and they're taking a conscious decision to make sure they get to your airport early enough to be able to use these commercial services and to be able to have time to eat in your restaurants and go shopping. Duty paid, on the other hand, is more of an impulse purchases. So most purchase decisions for duty paid tend to be made at the airport. So making sure that you get passengers in front of the products is going to be much more important for this type of category. And it makes sense. It's easier to convince passengers to buy when they come to the airport with intention of buying. People who plan to buy before leaving home are 3 times more likely to buy F&B than people who don't plan, 6 times more likely to buy retail, and up to 7 times more likely to buy duty-free. So it makes having people coming to the airport with the intention of buying makes your job of convincing them to buy much easier. And when they do buy, they'll spend more on average at your airport. 16% more on average for F&B and up to 54% more on average for retail. So if you want to grow your sales, you need to maximize the number of passengers coming to the airport with the intention of buying. And that's one of the key areas where airports can definitely improve, because when you look at global figures, currently only a small proportion of passengers come to the airport with the intention of buying. So in most cases, passengers don't view airports as valid shopping destinations. They don't consider the airport as a place you can go for a good meal or to buy something cool. And that leaves a huge opportunity for airports. We've seen the amount of impact having people come into your airport with the intention of buying can have on the actual spending. So if you're able to maximize the amount of passengers who come to your airport with the intention of buying, you'll have a great direct impact on your bottom line in terms of sales. And a big part of the problem is that currently airports aren't very good about communicating about commercial services. If you go to a lot of different airport websites, you'll find that you'll have a lot of flight information, parking maps, terminal maps, check-in information, but generally the commercial services or the information on commercial services is hidden or hard to find. Airports that are really doing a good job of maximizing passenger satisfaction and spending, on the other hand, try to do this very differently. And a really good example here is from Gatwick Airport. This is their picture from their homepage. No flight information, no airport maps, no check-in information, no number, nothing. Just a big picture saying it's all about you, and then a box where you can input your destination or your flight information. And what that does is it brings you to your own personal page on the airport website with the key information for your flight. So is it on time? Where do you need to check in? What's the information on that? What's the weather at your destination? And then what I find really interesting is on top of that, then they're bringing in the commercial services. If you look at the bottom part of the screen, you have advertising for parking, for F&B, and for retail. And so what Gatwick Airport is doing very differently is they're taking the same information, but they're changing the hierarchy. And they're presenting it in a way which is much more useful for the passengers and which makes more sense for them. It's your personal information for your stay at the airport, and they want to make it as good as possible for you. And so they're using the way they're presenting information to subtly try to get you interested in buying some of the commercial services they have on offer. So it's all about presenting your information and making sure that you get passengers in front of information about your commercial services. And I'm speaking a lot about the website, but this could also be through your social media, your Twitter, your Facebook, your advertising, your loyalty programs. Make sure that you get the information about your commercial services in front of your passengers as much as possible. Another thing I find interesting about the Gatwick Airport website is that even in the way they present the list of brands or the list of shops they have at the airport, it's very different from the way most airports will do it. Quite often, you'll see things grouped by location or by terminal or by brand. What they've done in Gatwick is quite different. They've grouped things by need. In this case for F&B, it's the different options are grouped between how do you want to dine in style, do you want a good breakfast, do you want to eat quickly. So what they've done, and this goes back to the point number one of having to understand why passengers want to consume at your airport. What they've done is they've matched their communication to passenger needs and make sure that the way they communicate speaks to passengers in a way that makes sense to them. And this importance of communication is one of the main reasons why we've added a complete section in the Airport Consumer Survey for this year, focusing specifically on the communication channels airports have in place, to help you understand exactly which communication channels are most effective at driving sales and driving penetration rates for your different commercial services. So make sure that you communicate about your commercial offering as much as possible. Make sure that passengers see this information before they even leave home. Once you get passengers to the airport with the intention of buying, that's half the job. As I said, most people come to the airport not with the intention of buying anything, but actually to catch a flight. And there's a whole lot of different things that can get in the way of them actually doing that. So you need to make sure that you're maximizing your conversion rates and you're getting as many people as possible actually purchasing something from your airport. And converting passengers into actual shoppers is one of the key challenges airports face. Whereas a shopping mall, people will spend maybe 2-3 hours there. In an airport, people don't have much time. And there's a whole lot of different things that can get in the way of them actually purchasing something. So if you want to maximize your likelihood of doing so, you need to overcome the key barriers to purchase, the things that get in the way of why passengers are not purchasing from your airport. And globally, what we see is that the key barriers to purchase can be grouped into two main categories. The first one is processes. Not having enough time, not finding what I wanted, having to get to the gate. People don't have much time to spend in your commercial areas in your airport. So if they're not able to find the product as quickly as possible, or if they've just spent too much time in security and don't have enough time to go hunting around for a product, they will not buy it. They'll go to the next airport and they'll pick it up there. So making sure that you give passengers enough time in your commercial area is essential if you want to be able to maximize purchases. The second main barrier to purchase is what I would call lack of value. And on this slide, this is all the people who are saying, I'm not hungry, I'm not thirsty, I don't want to buy anything, it's too expensive. Or in the worst case for the F&B, the airline will actually provide the meal. So I'm willing to take my chance of airline food rather than with the restaurants you have on offer here. And what these different reasons to me say is that these are people who've looked at your commercial services, looked at your restaurants, looked at your shops and say, it's okay, but it's not good enough to interest me. There's nothing really here that makes me want to go into that restaurant or that shop and buy something. So these are people who are saying that what you have on offer isn't valuable or interesting enough to get me to want to go into that. And if you want to be able to maximize spending at your airport, you have to work on creating a sense of value and on creating an offering which is attractive for your passengers. And then you have to understand exactly why passengers are not buying or where you're losing your sales at the airport. This is an example of the analysis we do for airports taking part in the Airport Consumer Survey. You take all the passengers coming to the airport. In this case, it's for F&B. And what we're looking at is we're trying to break this into groups, into 6 groups, according to how passengers reach their decision to buy or not buy. For instance, your determined shoppers, in the case of this airport, 33% of all passengers. These are people who came to the airport with the intention of buying and then bought something. Then you have your lost sales. These are people who came to the airport saying, I want to buy something, and didn't. In this case, it's good. It's only 2% of all passengers, but that's still 2% too many, because these are people who are coming to the airport saying, I want to buy F&B, and then didn't. On the other end of the spectrum, you have your die-hard non-shoppers, people who said, I don't have any intention of buying anything, and then don't. And your impulse purchases, so people who come to the airport saying, I don't want to buy anything, but then see something good and actually want to. So the idea with this type of analysis is helping you see exactly where you're losing people along your purchase decision. And then you need to understand who you're losing. So what we generally do is we put the demographics into these 6 main categories. So the top 3 categories, the first 3 in blue, these are people who actually purchase something. And again, it's this example from the same airport. What we see is that the top 3 tend to be lower income or mid to low income, low frequency, so people who don't travel very much or very often. They're spending a larger amount of time at the airport, and they tend to be traveling for international. On the other hand, the passengers who are not buying anything, that's your bottom 3 groups, these are your higher income, frequent flyer, more domestic passengers. So what this is showing is that this airport is selling to lower income international passengers, people who are spending more time at the airport, but they're completely missing out on the higher income frequent flyers flying domestically. So what this tends to show is this airport might need to review the type of F&B offering it has. It tends to focus more on fast food type offering, and what this analysis tends to show is that potentially a higher end or more expensive restaurant might be able to attract some of the higher income passengers who would like a better dining experience and who don't want to go in for the fast food when at the airport. That would be a way of getting them to come to the airport a little bit earlier and increase their dwell time. If you're able to do that and can give them a good meal, well then you can maybe maximize your chance of getting these people to buy something from some of the shopping in your airport as well, especially if you position it well with regards to the F&B outlets, which are key attraction points for those passengers. And then if you want to be able to improve your conversion rates and make sure that you're able to maximize the number of passengers purchasing, you need to understand exactly why you're losing sales. And so for this same airport, what we did, and this is what we do for other airports taking part in the airport consumer survey, is we do a detailed analysis of satisfaction levels. And that's what I've done here. What I've done is I've plotted the difference between the satisfaction level for each item and for each different group of passengers with the airport's overall average. So in red are the areas which are well below average, and in green are the areas which are well above average. And this airport was interested in focusing on the lost sales. So the people who are coming to the airport saying, I want to buy, but then go away without buying something. And what the analysis shows is that for the lost sales, the areas where they're the least satisfied or what's making them the least happy is availability of seating. So these are people who are coming to the airport saying, I want to buy something, and they're not. And what's happening here is that this airport, and we help them understand, is that they're using, or passengers tend to be using the F&B outlets as a place to sit. The airport has not put enough seating in the gate areas, so a lot of people are sitting in the restaurant area but are not actually consuming. So what's happening is this is blocking tables and preventing people who want to buy something from doing so. So understanding what the satisfaction levels are can help you have more detailed insight into some of the reasons why people are more likely to buy or not buy, and which group is buying or not buying, and for what reasons. So you need to understand where you're losing your sales. You need to understand who you're losing, so which passenger segments are not buying, and also which passenger segments are buying. And then you need to understand why, and that's why you need to analyze the satisfaction levels to get a more detailed understanding of exactly what is driving or preventing sales. Here's some examples of how some airports around the world are overcoming some of the key barriers to purchase. A lot of passengers tend to not purchase because they say they can't find the product when they're at the airport. They don't have the time to go hunting for something. So airports like Copenhagen put in place possibilities of ordering for home, tax-free shop online, and then you can pick it up at the airport or on arrival. If you don't want to carry your purchase during your flight, well, pick it up when you arrive at the airport. Make sure that you've bought it and then come collect it. So just another way to overcome the barrier for purchase of people who don't want to carry a product. Heathrow has taken that even a step further and is providing home delivery for passengers who live in the UK and who've purchased more than a certain amount, in this case £300. So again, making it interesting for passengers and providing additional services, try to just provide another argument to help push you to consume or to actually want to purchase that from the airport. And then we've seen that dwell time is one of the key barriers to purchase. And this is an example from Montreal, which I thought was really original in terms of helping improve processing times, but also at the same time maximize spending. What they did is they recently redone quite a lot of the F&B and commercial outlets around their security area, as well as airside. And so they trialed a free priority lane through security. What you needed to do is sign up online, and then the airport will tell you, well, if you agree to go through security at this time, we'll send you an invitation on your smartphone. And the passenger, when the time is right, just goes up to the security queue, the priority lane, with their smartphone, shows the invitation, and they get allowed through. What this does is this helps maximize the chances that people will spend in the F&B outlets around security. If you know exactly what time you can go through security, well, why not go have a coffee? Why not go pick up a bite to eat while you wait? You don't have that stress of wondering if you're going to be able to make it through to your flight on time. And then this also helps the airport streamline the security process and make sure it's as quick as possible. And that helps maximize the dwell time passengers have post-security to make sure they have enough time to pick up something from the duty-free or from one of the other shops there. So it's just a really original way of making sure that you can get people through the process as quickly as possible and maximize their dwell time. If you want to be able to maximize sales at your airport, you need to make sure that your offering or what you're offering meets passenger needs. And so in other words, you need to make sure that it's attractive enough to catch people's attention when they're walking through your airport. You'll see a lot of people rushing through the airport, not really looking at the shops. And so if you want to be able to maximize the chance of getting people to purchase something from your airport, well, you need to have a commercial offering which is attractive enough to get people who probably don't want to buy anything from your airport to change their mind, to interest them just enough to say, okay, well, I'll stop here for a couple minutes and go have a look in that shop or in that restaurant. And if you want to be able to do that, you need to make sure that you understand what drives passenger satisfaction with the commercial experience. For F&B, the main drivers of passenger satisfaction with F&B are choice. Choice of menus, choice of restaurants. Least important to passenger satisfaction for F&B are staff, cleanliness, and available seating. The problem is that when you look at what passengers currently think of F&B offerings at airports worldwide, what you see is that passengers are most satisfied with cleanliness, availability of seating, and friendliness of staff. So passengers are most satisfied with the aspects of the F&B experience which are least important to satisfaction with F&B. On the other hand, passengers are very dissatisfied or less satisfied with those parts of the F&B experience which are most important. So choice of restaurants, choice of menus. What this shows is that airports are currently not delivering the experience or the F&B experience that passengers want. If you want to maximize passenger satisfaction levels with F&B, you need to maximize satisfaction with choice of restaurants, choice of menus. So airports need to change their priorities to focus more on providing a sense of choice when it comes to the F&B. And it's the same thing for duty-free. Passengers want more choice. Atmosphere, selection of shops, and selection of products are the areas which have the highest impact on satisfaction with duty-free. Unfortunately, when you look at satisfaction levels globally, these are the aspects of the duty-free experience which passengers are least satisfied with. So again, airports don't have the current priorities right. If you want to be able to maximize satisfaction with the duty-free, you need to make sure that you're focusing on providing passengers with a greater sense of choice. And that's always going to be a challenge. Airports don't have much space. You're not a shopping mall, so you can't put an infinity number of shops or brands or outlets in your airport. But what you need to be trying to do is you need to try to focus on creating a greater sense of choice if you want to be able to maximize satisfaction levels with your commercial services. And here are just some examples of how airports are doing that. One of the key trends lately is having food festivals at your airport in order to make the F&B offering seem more attractive. One of the key problems airports in more mature markets such as Europe, North America, Australia have is that a lot of passengers are getting bored with what the airport has on offer. In every single airport you go, you have the same brands, same restaurants, same products everywhere. Having a food festival or a pop-up restaurants or pop-up food outlets at your airport for a short period of time is a great way of making the F&B experience seem more interesting and more lively. Creating, again, a greater sense of choice, having passengers who go through your airport fairly frequently, giving them something different, something that they maybe haven't seen before, and they're maybe more likely to want to try. Or it's trying to create or provide something that passengers can't get elsewhere. And that's where local food markets, such as the Napa Farms Market in San Francisco, or in Portugal, what Ana is doing with the duty-free and the Taste of Portugal shops in Lisbon. So it's providing a sense of products that you can only find in that airport, something unique. That's choice. Having the same brand, the same brands, the same products that you find elsewhere, well, that's not really choice. It's just having the same products. If you're able to provide something local, that will give passengers a sense that they have a greater sense of choice at your airport. It's bringing the products or the food to the passenger instead of making the passenger go find the product. In the US, you have quite a few airports where they've implemented iPad systems in the gate areas where passengers can order F&B from different food providers at the airport and have it delivered straight to the gate area. So again, bringing the food to the passenger, or bringing the product to the passenger, instead of making the passenger have to go and hunt to it at your airport. It's providing unique products, and that's what Dubai is very good at. If you want to give a greater sense of choice, well, give passengers a sense that they're buying something they can only find in your airport. That's by limiting the sense of, or creating a sense that there's a limited offer, it's something unique, well, that's something that you can, passengers may be more likely to purchase rather than a normal, traditional product that they can find in every other airport, and they could probably pick up at the arrivals duty-free in their next airport. And it's providing a unique service. This is the Personal Shopper initiative in Heathrow. What I find really interesting about this is that it mixes everything an airport should be doing. It's starting with a detailed understanding of who your key segments are. It's focusing and providing a service which matches the needs of those important segments. In this case, it's the higher income passengers who want a greater sense of service when they're at the airport. What they're doing is they're providing a personal shopper service where people will help you get or find the products from among all the different brands and outlets at Heathrow and help you purchase that. So it's being able to maximize the likelihood that these passengers will purchase something from the airport, but providing a more unique, a more personal, and a more tailored service. So if you want to be able to maximize spending and satisfaction at your airport, you need to create a greater sense of choice, and you need to work out how you can provide passengers with the impression or with a sense that there is choice or there is a variety on offer at your airport. And then once you've done all that, the final step is monitoring your performance and finding ways to improve passenger satisfaction and improve spending at your airport. And that's what the Airport Consumer Survey is all about. It's about helping airports, concessionaires, and brands maximize satisfaction and spending by understanding what passengers want and helping them improve their performance, their satisfaction levels, and their commercial performance by benchmarking with leading airports around the world. The way it works is it's a survey distributed at the gate to passengers to get their feedback about the commercial experience of that airport on the day, while it's still fresh in their mind. So we're asking passengers what they thought of the parking experience, what they thought of the F&B, the retail, the duty-free experience, whether or not they bought, how much they spent, which outlets, what they bought, and for those passengers who didn't buy, what are the reasons why they didn't purchase. It's done twice a year to get a picture of the winter and summer schedule at the airports, and it's done using tablets so the airports can customize the survey, adding, removing sections, adding or removing questions, and tailor it to their own airport experience, for instance, by adding the list of shops and brands to get detailed information at a shop-specific level. In the research, we focus on 6 basic modules. First one is passenger segmentation, so understanding what the demographic profile is of your passengers, and helping you identify key segments purchasing or not purchasing at your airport. We look at communication to help you understand which are the channels or the communication channels which are most effective at driving satisfaction and driving sales at your airport. New this year, we've also added a section on airport parking to help you understand what drives satisfaction and spending with the airport car park experience. Then we do F&B, duty paid, and duty-free retail. And all of these commercial services, again, it's looking at understanding what passengers purchased, how much they spent, and for those who didn't purchase, why, and helping you understand what is their satisfaction levels and what is the spending levels and what is the link between the two. Airports taking part can also take optional modules. These focus on helping you understand what passengers think of the arrivals experience, for the arrivals duty-free, for instance, and it's helping airports understand and cover non-traveling passengers, so the meeters and greeters, who are one of the key segments for the landside commercial offering, the airport staff, and specific segments as well. We can do surveys, for instance, focusing only on Chinese passengers to help you understand what those passengers want from the commercial experience at your airport. So the idea is to give you all the information you need to optimize and to maximize passenger satisfaction and spending in your airport. And the research aims to provide the information you need for each of these 5 steps which we've discussed today. We help you identify your key segments, what their habits are, their purchasing habits, their spending habits, and their travel habits are. And we help you link this to your detailed passenger profiles or personas. We show you which are the key channels that drive sales at your airport. We help you understand who is buying, not buying, which groups are buying or not buying, and what are the main reasons for people who are buying and what are the main reasons for people who are not buying. We show you what drives passenger satisfaction and spending so you can focus improvement efforts on the areas which have the highest impact on your bottom line. And we help you understand what your conversion rates and penetration rates are so you can improve the global mechanics of your sales process. And then we help you systematically track your performance and compare with other airports around the world to be able to benchmark and find ways to improve and systematically improve the commercial experience provided by your airport. The idea is to help you manage the whole commercial experience at your airport, to give you all the insight, all the information you need to optimize the commercial experience for your passengers on one dashboard, on one report. The idea is to help you see the commercial experience at your airport as a whole and to help you maximize spending and penetration rates for your commercial service across the whole airport. So with the Airport Consumer Survey, the idea is to help you optimize your commercial experience and benchmark with leading airports around the world to help you understand exactly what you need to be doing to improve and what you need to be doing to be able to sell more to your passengers. So in conclusion, if you want to be able to optimize your commercial experience, there are 5 key steps. Number 1 is observing, understanding who your passengers are and what they want and expect from your airport in terms of the airport experience and in terms of the commercial experience. Then it's communicating. If you want to be a shopping destination, well, you have to act like one. And that means you have to promote yourselves and you have to communicate to passengers what you have on offer. What we've seen is that for some of the key commercial services, the decision to purchase is generally made at home. So pre-planned purchases are extremely important for F&B and duty-free. And if you want to be able to maximize spending at your airport, we need to maximize the proportion of passengers who come to your airport with the intention of purchasing. You need to understand what the key barriers to purchase are, so understand where you're losing sales, who you're losing, and why you're losing these sales if you want to put in place strategies to correct that and to get as many passengers as possible to purchase something from your airport. You need to make sure that your commercial experience matches passenger needs. So you have to understand what drives passenger satisfaction with the F&B, the parking, the duty-free, and the retail, and make sure that your commercial efforts are focused on improving your performance in those areas which are most important to passenger satisfaction. And then you need to systematically track your performance over time and make sure that you're improving for each of these different KPIs and for all the key KPIs at your airport. So that was it for the webinar. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I will be putting a copy of this webinar session on our YouTube page for future reference if you want to be able to share it with your colleagues. And if your team wants a demonstration of the Airport Consumer Survey and how it can benefit your airport or your company or your brand, we'd be quite happy to set this up, so don't hesitate to get in touch. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar session, and I hope you'll be able to join us again in the future. Thank you very much for your time today.